They found the child standing over the body column, smiling, while the blood soaked into Missouri soil. What he whispered next made even the sheriff drop his weapon. There are places in American history where facts wither and the shadows deepen, not from time, but from truths too terrible to teach. In the sweltering summer of 1867, one such truth was born into the Missouri dirt, wrapped in a boy's smile and baptized in secret science still refuses to touch. His name was Timothy Caldwell. He was 8 years old when death began orbiting him like a moon. To the eye, he was a model child, small, polite, quiet. He said yes, ma'am, to the cruelest aunt, and bowed his head in church with a reverence most adults had lost. But the people of Sedalia County would soon learn, evil does not arrive howling from the woods. Sometimes it knocks with small knuckles. Sometimes it walks in barefoot, carrying a cloth bag and wearing pale blue eyes that blink too little and see too much. His Uncle Thomas had taken the boy in, not out of love, but need. The war had broken men, and the Caldwell farm needed hands more than hearts. Timothy worked the fields without rest, without complaint, without joy. A neighbor once said he worked like a machine. Machines don't play. Machines don't cry. Machines don't stop. It began slowly, as such things always do. A calf missing. Then a neighbor's chickens found dead in the morning, necks cleanly broken, not mauled, not torn, just ended. Then came Mary Fletcher, 5 years old, drowned in a creek so shallow even a drunk man couldn't trip in it. Timothy found her, or so he claimed. He described the body with clinical detail, the branch that snagged her dress, the angle of her arms, the color of water by her lips. The adults called him brave. Dr. Samuel Harding, the only physician in 50 miles, called him something else. The doctor had seen too much death during the war to be fooled by clean hands. He studies us, Harding wrote in his journal, the way I study wounds. But Sedalia wasn't ready for what Timothy truly was. To those still watching, write the phrase, "The mask smiles twice," in the comments repeated. Once for what you see, once for what you missed. It's how you begin to see beneath the veil. The second death came weeks later. Henrik Lynn, the beekeeper, found at the base of Devil's Bluff, neck snapped clean as a twig. Timothy had found him too, or perhaps placed him there. No one knows. Bees surrounded the body, but none stung. The hives above were untouched. Dr. Harding called it the most unnatural accident he'd ever seen. Still, they didn't act. How could they? The boy prayed. The boy cried. The boy sang hymns in perfect pitch. But something inside, Timothy was watching, always watching. Then came Jacob Mills. The boy disappeared in the woods. 4 days, no food, no water. Then Timothy said he heard crying. They found Jacob in an abandoned well, barely breathing. He died hours later. But the brush covering the well hadn't fallen randomly. It had been arranged, camouflaged, deliberately. That night, Dr. Harding didn't sleep. He returned to the well alone. What he saw there changed him. Not just the signs of careful concealment, not just the strange pattern of branches. No, it was the bone-deep certainty that someone had placed Jacob in that well and waited for him to die. And Timothy had found him exactly when he knew the boy would be too weak to tell anyone anything. The boy's presence, once tolerated, became a whisper beneath every roof in Sedalia. Neighbors no longer waved when he passed. Farmers locked their gates not to keep animals in, but something far more calculated out. And yet, Timothy smiled. Every day. The same thin curve of lips, untouched by joy. It wasn't happiness, it was concealment. Dr. Harding, who once studied battlefield trauma, now studied something far older, more primal. This wasn't madness born of war. This wasn't grief or neglect. Timothy Caldwell was something else, something ancient wearing a child's bones. Animals kept dying. always clean deaths. Pigs bled out from wounds that made no sense. Chickens found with broken necks, killed with anatomical precision. A neighbor swore she saw the boy kneeling in her barn at sunrise, watching a cow labor in pain with a twisted leg, his face blank, unmoved, fascinated. Still, nothing could be proven. Every tragedy had a reasonable shape, an excuse, a cause. He was just a child after all. Too helpful, perhaps. Too close, but never quite guilty. Then Harding made a decision that would damn him. He followed the boy. Timothy had spoken offhandedly about a cave, his thinking place. One evening, the doctor rode out alone, deep into the hills. What he found would become the first piece of unholy proof. A dark, narrow hollow carved into the land, hidden beneath thorns and vines. Inside, he found bones. Dozens. Birds, squirrels, rabbits. But not torn apart, dissected. Catalogued, arranged, each laid beside careful drawings. A child's hand had made them. Yes, but with the precision of a surgeon. Worse still, tucked in a leather pouch, were sketches of people. Small bodies in shallow creeks. Old men lying at the base of cliffs. And children, eyes closed, hands reaching. Timothy had drawn them all before anyone knew they were dead. One drawing showed Mary Fletcher, her mouth open underwater. Another showed Henrik's twisted form bees, labeled and counted. The third Jacob Mills in the well, eyes sunken, limbs failing. In the margins, notes in tiny, controlled writing. Air deprivation increases hallucination. Dehydration reduces fear. These weren't the scribbles of trauma, they were research. Harding staggered out of that cave, changed. Not afraid, transformed. He now understood. Timothy wasn't becoming a killer. He already was one. A methodical, calculating predator, born not of abuse or illness, but as if sculpted by some darker hand to study us. If you've come this far, type "The Cave Remembers" twice in the comments below. It's how we mark the ones who see through the veil. But how do you accuse a child of this? How do you bring drawings and animal bones to a sheriff and say, "This boy is evil"? That was the question Harding wrestled with as he stood over his notes, 2 journals now, filled cover to cover with his observations. But the boy was slipping, or maybe showing off. He began asking questions, too specific, too informed. During one visit, as Harding treated Thomas Caldwell's strained back, Timothy asked, "How long can someone survive with a broken rib if the lung gets punctured?" Harding played dumb. "Not long," he said. Timothy frowned. "That's not what your book said." The boy was reading medical texts, memorizing them. Later that week, Harding found another dead calf. The wound on its neck had been treated with ash and wrapped in twine. A primitive but competent tourniquet attempt. It had died anyway. The journal entry read, "Muscle spasms interfere with binding. Need different method." Timothy wasn't just killing. He was learning from it. Harding knew the boy had reached a turning point. He was done with animals. People were next. And he wouldn't wait long. The last act began not with blood, but silence. No roosters crowed at the Caldwell farm. No cows lowed. Even the wind through the fields held its breath. When Dr. Harding arrived that cold November morning, the barn door stood ajar. No movement, no sound. Only Timothy on the porch, still as death, his arms crossed behind his back like a schoolboy awaiting a lesson. "I've been waiting for you," he said. Harding had brought his pistol. He knew better now. Timothy's presence wasn't accidental. The boy wasn't reacting. He was orchestrating. And today, the performance had begun. Inside the farmhouse, Thomas and Sarah lay in their bed breathing, barely. Their skin was pale, their pulses slow, sedated, not dead, yet. "What did you give them?" Harding asked. "Something from the woods," Timothy replied. "You'd be amazed what grows under certain trees. Some of it kills fast, some of it waits." The boy's tone was almost affectionate, not cruel, not angry, just curious. Harding saw then that Timothy wasn't just experimenting on others. He was evolving, testing the world, mapping it, learning what people do when they're afraid, when they trust, when they die. "You know why I brought you here today?" Timothy asked, pulling a length of rope from behind a chair. "Because you're different. You see me for what I am. You understand, and that makes you the final variable." The doctor didn't answer. His hand rested on his pistol, but the boy didn't flinch. He stepped forward, smiling, his voice suddenly soft, too soft. "I want to know what happens when someone tries to stop me." And then he lunged. The struggle was violent, brief. Timothy fought like a feral thing, trained and practiced. He had hidden blades sewn into his clothes, blunt tools stashed beneath furniture. Harding's arm was slashed before he could fire. But the noise, the struggle, was what mattered. Outside, waiting, were Sheriff Crawford and his men. They burst through the door like salvation. It took 3 grown men to subdue Timothy Caldwell, who clawed and kicked and screamed, not in rage, but with delight. He laughed as they pinned him to the floor, blood on his teeth, ropes binding his limbs, eyes bright with revelation. "You're too late," he whispered to Dr. Harding. "You were always too late. If your heart is racing, comment, 'The lesson never ends twice.'" For what he taught, for what we ignored. Timothy was remanded to the Missouri State Hospital. There, behind stone walls, he became a case study, the boy who killed like a surgeon, who learned empathy not to feel but to mimic, who wept when it earned him extra rations, and smiled when it earned him trust. He wrote daily, dozens of journals. At night, attendants heard him whispering in the dark. Not prayers, practices, simulations, rehearsals. Months passed, and then, one summer morning in 1868, Timothy Caldwell was gone. No broken lock, no footprints, no struggle. Just an empty bed and the lingering scent of iron and mildew. The official report called it an administrative oversight. Dr. Harding didn't believe that, nor did Sheriff Crawford. For years after, Harding kept his own files tracking deaths, disappearances, patterns. Always the same trail. A helpful boy, a tragic accident, and a community that whispered but never acted. The child aged, but the method never changed. And somewhere, in the cracks of history, Timothy learned how to disappear, learned to wear faces, learned to become the kind of man no one suspects until the blood runs and the silence returns. This was the story of Timothy Caldwell. The boy science couldn't explain, and still can't. If this disturbed you good, you're starting to see it. Now share this story with someone who trusts too easily. And if you're not afraid to look deeper, subscribe to the Forgotten Rites. Because this was just one file, one name, and evil. is always recruiting.